Alrighty, so here we are at week 5. And week 5 is an important week because it's before our first big dev project. So I'm going to first just quickly kind of look at the work you have, and then I'm going to get into talking about the code review schedule and when that'll be released and just some other stuff. And then I'm going to go over my code for Dev 1, but I'm going to go over it relatively quickly because it would take a while, longer than I think you want to watch. But if you want to know more about it, please reach out. Okay, so for our code along, we are moving into arrays. So arrays are just something fundamental to understand in JavaScript, and they're used practically everywhere. So understanding how to do them is really important. And I talk about, go out and read the MDN website for more information on this. It's really helpful. And using the dev tools whenever possible to walk through that code will really, really help. And I talk about this as you're moving through this content. Okay, and then on our Learn Together, we're going to take week 4 and we're going to use one of the most common design patterns, which is combining these objects and combining arrays and objects together. Okay, so an array of objects. And that's what you're going to do for week 5. Okay, so you're going to refactor. And by the way, there's a video, so I don't think I need to go over this. And again, apologize for my bad audio there. One general thing I want to say before I get into some of my other topics is just that I hope you're getting used to the fact of my time when I'm available versus yours. And this is why I have a Discord channel. So if you're not on Discord, let me encourage you again. The invite is up in week 0, okay, in the next steps. So you can get onto Discord, and if you're somebody that works late at night, or just even if you're working during the day, this is a great place because the more people that converse out there, the more interaction, the more helpful people can be to each other. Okay, so the topics this week. So this week I'm going to go over with you this week at the beginning I'm going to go over this. I'm recording this early as I normally do, but the day this is going to be due on the Monday coming up is the day I'm going to release what I'm about to show you, because I want everybody to have this at the same time. Okay, so several of you come here early, which is great. So just know you want to check in on Monday, probably Monday morning sometime, and I'll release that. All right. So here it is. Oh, I should have got rid of that. So one of my challenges this semester is that I'm teaching 2 programming languages, context switching my brain. I know it's good for me. So I'm teaching Python and JavaScript. So when you're looking at this list, what you're really looking at is this is broken down by day, and this starts on February 9th. And you guys, and what I do is I generally hold like a week open for before the due date and then some days after the due date. Okay. So let me just show you a calendar. I think this might make more sense looking at this from a calendar perspective, but you can let me know. So when I look forward to week 6, right? Yours is due on the 17th. My other class is due on the 14th. And I've already apologized to them that it's on Valentine's Day. But what you want to do is you'll have some days before the dev that you can sign up for either an assistance or the actual code review. But if you haven't signed up for either, and even if you have, that code is due at this point, okay? And then once you submit it, now let me say the key to this is if you come in early, you get your code review, and we find some issues, you can fix them, right? If you're coming in for a code review and I find a couple of issues, you can fix them and then submit those changes here. But if you're coming in after the due date, then whatever you've submitted is what you and I are going to use for your code review. And the way this is reflected here is I start your kind of window of opening, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't sign up here, but just think about that I'm running 2 classes, if you would, right? So, and here's the way you would sign up. Is you'd put your name, and do me a favor, put your class. Matter of fact, let me just, since we're sitting here, right? And course, right? That way I can see, right? Rio's signing up, taking CIT 93. Right? I'm going to come in for an assistance session. Cool. Right? So that way you know, and I know you have that time reserved. And that's great. So what you have to do is kind of think through your own schedule for what that looks like. Okay? There we go. So I hope that makes sense. If you look at it this way, right? So again, you can sign up for an assistance or a review, right? Now the assistance after the code review, after the code is due, right? You can still come in for one, but if you haven't submitted that code, then it's late. And somebody asked me a good question is if you come in and you do a code review, right? But you change things, do you have to come in for another one? The answer is no, right? Just there's minor things, as long as you change them and I look at your work, great. And I see those changes, then I'll grade it as is, okay? I've tried to open up as much time as I can, but here's going to be the reality that, this may or may not meet your schedule. So I'm asking you to be flexible, and I will be as flexible as I can be. But the sooner you reach out to me with this doesn't work, can we work this out? I'll do my best to do it. I just want you to know, as I kind of started with before, is that, I am not a late night person. So if you ask me to meet with you at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I'm not going to do it. And even 7 is a little hard, quite frankly. I get up at 5. I work until almost 6. And by that time, my brain is done. So, but again, I'll do my best based on our schedules. Okay. So that's the way this goes. I hope this is a big part of our class. Every one, there's 3 of these. Each one accounts for about 16.5% of your overall grade. And really, it's the most important thing you get out of a class like this. Okay, so if you have any questions, ask me. Just to reiterate, this will be released on the morning of February 7th. And once I release it, I will put a link in here so that you always have it. I will also post a link out in Discord, just another reason to do that. Okay, so I've done that. So let me show you my code. So I rolled some things up just to give you an idea. So my code is based on, my EV charging, right? So charging my EV. So I set up an object just with some data about what I needed for my car, some information about it. I set up a global array that I'm going to push objects into. I have a run random time because rather than just to run it or pass multiple data points to it, I ended up just running charge session data and with the inputs of 25 of them. So then I just ran through. Is it here? Oh, actually, no, it's here. Sorry, I was like, where am I calling that? Oh yeah, no, it is here. It took me a minute. It's so funny. Sometimes when you write code, you have to remember like where things went and why you did it. But So here's where I'm calling, where I do a random, I generate some random data basically. That's what I'm doing here, right? So let me just run my code so you can just, and I think I've shown this before, but in case I haven't, right? So what I do, and I didn't do any CSS, we'll do that later. Ooh, looks like I have an error. Oh, I love that. Okay, I don't love that. Oh, hold on, I know what that was. Oh, that's so funny. I must have deleted that function call that I was actually just looking for when I was showing you, is that this run for random times. Okay. So this one where I do a for loop, and I determine how many, the first and the second number, what I needed to calculate my charging costs. And then I did a random math random to figure location. I just did some dates. These are actually not JavaScript dates. And then I call cost per determine cost per session, which is up here. And then you still have display on page. So these are, this is really determining the cost right here. And then I set up that object, and then I push that object into that empty array. Okay. So, and then I kind of do, here what I did is I used a ternary operator. It's just a kind of a quicker way to do an if statement. You don't have to do it, but once I wrote ternaries, it was hard to go back. They were just much, much simpler. Okay. So anyway, I know it looks like there's a lot of code here. I mean, there's 108 lines. There's not that much, right? So, but this just gives you, what I did for mine. And what I do is I don't ask students to do something I haven't done myself. So on my output, once I've generated all these arrays in that, sorry, those objects in that array, then I iterate over them and I determine cost at the bottom, so that you can look at, let me see if I have an error there or not. Oh yeah, I gotta look at my reduce. I did a inputs.reduce, so I have to look at that. But I did a way of calculating the total cost for that, and so that was one of the requirements, right? So part of what you're doing is you're creating a list, and then our array, and then you're updating that array. Okay, ask me any other questions you want about that. And then coding standards, we've talked about these, so make sure you've reviewed the Airbnb. So if you're curious, you just search Airbnb JavaScript. I was actually looking at single versus double quotes. It seems like most of the time it uses single quotes, but I think is a really good idea to look through here, right? And then understand it's really down here that it breaks it down by the table of contents, right? So here's the kind of stuff you want. Functions, right? We use name functions in this class, right? So that's the other thing, is your name functions. You don't start it with a function. It's just a safer way to do it. So the last thing about this is that when you come in for the code review, you're going to need to walk me through your code using DevTools, because I've been harping on that quite hard. So when you go to sources, and I've covered this, so hopefully you're getting this by now, right? So if I said, okay, set a breakpoint, and if I did it there, I refresh the page, right? I'm stopped there, and then I would have you walk me through and explain to me what your code is doing. And then you and I would have a conversation, because before you come in, if I have time, I'm generally reviewing and making notes about your code. Okay, so that's really the code review part of this, right? So, and I already talked about that, but here's the other thing. If for some reason you don't come in for a code review, but you submit code, it really hurts your grade. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. Hopefully you're not in that situation, but That's it's probably what I would consider the most important part of this class is first you coming up with a concept on your own, right? So if I just kind of quickly looked, and by the way, if anybody's looking at this and they want me to, I'd done this before, I thought, but if you want me to copy these requirements down, right? So, right, here are the requirements, but you come up with a concept that's kind of, what you want your code to do, right? You build your directory in the private repo. You call it dev and then dev zero, right? And by the way, you don't have to give me a Git hack link for this because it won't work in the private repos. Okay. So you want variables, all these types, at least two functions, and one function has to return a value used in another one. And the display on page doesn't count here. Implement arrays, right? Implement loops, produce meaningful output, display output on page. Yes, you can use mine. Needs to be different than any code you've used before. And this idea of using comments, I made, where did I put this somewhere? But, there's two thinkings on comments. I think it is good. And you can see in my work here, I did put some comments above each, but it's also when you write your code, if you create variable names and function names that say what they are, it makes your code much more readable. And having readable code is probably one of the best things you can do. Okay. I haven't provided a link to mine. Maybe what you could do and tell me in this example is tell me if you'd like to see my code, right? And then I gave the link to Airbnb and I talked about this. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of what's heading at you. I know this can sound intimidating, but I've been doing these code reviews for about 3 years, and almost most students tell me it's where they really feel like they bring together and they deepen their knowledge by doing the project and then coming in for code reviews. Because in the real world of coding, you're going to have code reviews. Somebody's going to look at your code and they're going to ask you about it. So the sooner you get used to it, the better. Okay, hope this helps you out. Talk to you later.